The ocean roared, a wild beast under the Maine moonlight, and I stood frozen, heart pounding like it might break free. My best friend, Caleb, was inches away, his breath warm against my cheek, and in that moment, I knew nothing would ever be the same. We were 18, reckless, and teetering on the edge of a truth neither of us had dared to speak. It was the summer of 2015, in a sleepy coastal town where secrets clung to the salt air. Caleb and I had grown up together, two kids who shared everything: late-night talks, stolen beers, dreams of escaping this place. He was the golden boy, all blonde hair and easy smiles, the kind of guy everyone loved without trying. I was Ethan, quieter, always watching him like he was the sun, and I was just a shadow trailing behind. We'd spent every summer on this beach, but tonight felt different, electric, like the universe was holding its breath. We'd snuck out after midnight, the town asleep under a blanket of stars. The bonfire we'd built earlier had died to embers, and the cold sand pressed against our bare feet. Caleb had that look in his eyes, the one that made my stomach twist, a mix of mischief and something deeper, something I couldn't name. "Ethan," he said, voice low, "you ever feel like you're hiding from yourself?" His words hit me like a wave, pulling me under. I want to laugh it off, to keep things easy like always, but my throat tightened. I nodded, unable to lie. He stepped closer, and the world shrank to just us. The wind tugged at his hair, and I could see the freckles across his nose, lit by the moon. "I'm tired of hiding," he whispered, and before I could process it, his hand found mine. His touch was fire, burning away years of unspoken longing. I didn't pull away. I couldn't. My heart was a drumbeat, loud and unsteady, and all I could think was, this is it. This is what I've wanted. We stood there, hands locked, the ocean singing its endless song. I don't know who moved first, but suddenly his lips were on mine, soft and urgent, tasting of salt and freedom. It wasn't just a kiss. It was a confession, a rebellion, a promise we hadn't known we'd been keeping. The world could have ended right then, and I wouldn't have cared. But even as I melted into him, a shadow loomed in my mind. This town, these people, they'd never let us have this. Caleb pulled back, his eyes searching mine, wide with fear and hope. "Ethan," he started, but a noise cut him off. A twig snapped somewhere in the dark, and we froze, the spell broken. My pulse spiked, not from the kiss, but from the sudden dread. Someone was out there. We weren't alone. Instinctively, we dropped each other's hands, stepping apart like guilty kids caught stealing. The beach, once our sanctuary, now felt like a trap. "Who's there?" Caleb called, his voice sharper than I'd ever heard. No answer, just the rustle of leaves and the distant hum of waves. My mind raced. Had someone seen us? In a place like this, where church was law and whispers spread faster than wildfire, a moment like ours could ruin everything. I grabbed Caleb's arm, pulling him toward the path back to town. "We need to go," I hissed, my voice barely steady. We ran, the sand slowing us down, our breaths ragged. My mind was a storm of fear and exhilaration. That kiss, it was everything I never let myself dream of, but now it felt like a weight. Caleb kept pace beside me, his face unreadable in the dark. When we reached the edge of town, we stopped, panting under the dim glow of a streetlight. "Ethan," he said, grabbing my shoulders, "we can't just pretend that didn't happen." "I know," I said, but my voice cracked. I wanted to tell him I loved him, that I'd loved him for years, but the words stuck. Instead, I saw the fear in his eyes, mirroring my own. This wasn't just about us anymore. It was about the town, our families, the life we'd built here. We were two boys who'd crossed a line, and there was no going back. The next morning, the air felt heavier, like the world knew our secret. I woke to a text from Caleb. "Meet me at the pier. We need to talk." My stomach churned as I pulled on my hoodie and slipped out, the town still quiet in the early light. The pier stretched out over the water, weathered and gray, a place we'd fished and laughed and planned our futures. Now it felt like a courtroom. Caleb was already there, leaning against the railing, his hair catching the sunrise. He didn't smile when he saw me, and that scared me more than anything. Last night, he started, voice low. It wasn't a mistake. But I heard something this morning. People are talking. My heart sank. The twig snapped, the rustle. It wasn't just paranoia. Someone had seen us, or at least suspected. In a town this small, suspicion was enough. Who? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. He shook his head, eyes dark. Doesn't matter. They're saying we were out late, acting weird. My dad asked me about it at breakfast. Caleb's dad was a deacon, the kind of man who quoted scripture over coffee. If he suspected anything, it wouldn't end with a conversation. I felt the walls closing in, the town's judgment like a noose tightening. We can't let them know, I said, panic creeping in. Not yet. Caleb's jaw tightened, and for a moment, I thought he'd argue. But he nodded, his hand brushing mine briefly, a silent promise. We'd keep this secret, at least for now. But as we stood there, the weight of it settled over us. A love we couldn't name, a truth we couldn't share, and a memory that would haunt us both. The days after that night were a tightrope walk, every glance between Caleb and me loaded with unspoken words. The town buzzed with its usual rhythm. Fishermen hauling lobster traps, kids biking down Main Street. But beneath it, I felt the eyes, the whispers, the judgment waiting to pounce. We were careful, too careful, avoiding each other's touch in public, but the ache for him grew sharper, like a blade lodged in my chest. School started again, our senior year, and the hallways were a minefield. Caleb was still the guy everyone loved, quarterback, prom king material, the one teachers called promising. I was just Ethan, the artist kid who kept his head down and his sketchbook close. But now, every time our eyes met across the cafeteria, my heart stuttered. I'd catch him watching me, his smile flickering like he was trying to tell me something without words. It was torture, pretending we were just friends when all I could think about was that kiss. One afternoon, during art class, I was sketching the beach, the curve of the waves, the driftwood where we'd stood. My pencil lingered on the details, trying to capture the way the moonlight had lit Caleb's face. That's good, Ethan, Ms. Harper said, peering over my shoulder. But it feels heavy. What's on your mind? I froze, my cheeks burning. I mumbled something about the ocean and flipped the page. I couldn't tell her the truth, that every line I drew was a memory I couldn't shake. That night, Caleb texted me to meet him at the old lighthouse, a crumbling relic on the cliffs where no one went anymore. I got there first, the wind biting through my jacket, the sea below churning like my thoughts. When Caleb arrived, his face was pale, his usual confidence gone. My dad found my phone, he said, voice shaking. He saw our texts, not the bad ones, but enough to ask questions. My stomach dropped. Caleb's dad wasn't just strict. He was the kind who'd send his son to conversion camp without blinking. What did you say? I asked, my voice barely audible over the wind. Caleb ran a hand through his hair, pacing. I lied. So we were just hanging out, planning for college. But he didn't believe me. He kept asking why we were out so late, why we're always together. His eyes met mine, desperate. Ethan, I don't know how much longer I could do this. I wanted to grab him, to tell him we'd figure it out, but fear stopped me. Instead, I said, we just need to be careful. Lay low for a while. But even as I spoke, I hated myself. Careful meant hiding. It meant denying what we felt, what we were. Caleb's face hardened, and for the first time, I saw anger in his eyes. Careful, he snapped. I'm sick of being careful. I'm sick of pretending I don't. He stopped, swallowing hard. I don't want to lose you, Ethan. His words broke something in me. I stepped forward, closing the gap between us, and kissed him. It was reckless, out in the open where anyone could see, but I didn't care. For those few seconds, it was just us, the wind, and the truth. When we pulled apart, Caleb's eyes were wet, but he was smiling. We're going to get through this, he whispered. Together. But the next day, the whispers grew louder. At school, I overheard two girls in the hallway, their voices low but sharp. Caleb and Ethan? I heard they were acting weird on the beach. My blood ran cold. I wanted to confront them, to scream that it was none of their business, but I kept walking, head down, heart racing. By lunch, the rumors had spread, a wildfire we couldn't outrun. Caleb found me behind the gym, his face ashen. "They know," he said. "Not everything, but enough." We skipped the rest of the day, driving to the edge of town in his beat-up truck. The silence between us was heavy, broken only by the hum of the engine. "What do we do?" I asked, staring out at the endless road. Caleb gripped the wheel, his knuckles white. "We could leave," he said, half joking, half serious. "Just drive until no one knows us." I laughed, but it hurt. Leaving meant abandoning our families, our lives. It meant admitting the world had one. That night, I lay awake, replaying every moment. The kiss, the rumors, Caleb's desperate eyes. I wanted to believe we could fight this, that love could be enough. But deep down, I knew the town wouldn't let us. The next morning, Caleb didn't show up at school. I texted him, called him, but nothing. Panic clawed at me as I biked to his house, the dread growing with every pedal. When I got there, his mom answered the door, her face tight. "He's not here, Ethan," she said, her voice cold. "You should go." I stood there, frozen, as the door closed. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. Caleb was gone. Not just from school, not just from his house. Gone from the town like he'd been erased. I stood outside his place, the wind carrying the faint smell of salt, my mind spiraling. His mom's words echoed. "You should go." But I couldn't. Not without knowing where he was, what had happened. The town felt like it was closing in, every street a reminder of him, every glance from a neighbor a judgment. I biked to the beach, the place where it all began, hoping for answers. The sand was cold under my sneakers, the waves indifferent. I sat on the driftwood log, the one we'd stood by that night, and traced my fingers over the rough wood, wishing it could tell me where he'd gone. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Meet me at the lighthouse. Midnight." See, my heart leapt then sank. Was it really him? Or a trap? I didn't care. I had to know. The hours until midnight dragged, each one heavier than the last. I avoided home, my parents' questions, the town's prying eyes. When I reached the lighthouse, the moon was high, casting shadows across the cliffs. Caleb was there, his silhouette sharp against the sky. Relief flooded me, but it didn't last. His face was drawn, his eyes hollow. "They sent me away," he said, voice barely above a whisper. "My daddy found out. Not everything, but enough. He's sending me to some camp upstate. Tomorrow." I felt like I'd been punched. Camp wasn't just camp. Not for kids like us in a town like this. It was conversion therapy, a place to fix what wasn't broken. I grabbed his arm, desperate. "You can't go. Run. Come with me. We'll figure it out." But even as I said it, I knew it was a fantasy. We were kids, broke with nowhere to go. Caleb shook his head, tears glinting in his eyes. "I don't have a choice, Ethan. If I don't go, he'll kick me out. I'll lose everything." "Lose me?" I said, my voice breaking. "Isn't that worse?" He looked at me, and for a moment, I thought he'd agree. But he pulled away, his hands trembling. "I love you," he said, the words raw and final. "But I can't fight them. Not yet." He kissed me, quick and fierce, then turned and ran into the dark. I stood there, alone, the wind howling, feeling like the world had cracked open. The next week was a blur. I went through the motions, school, home, avoiding the whispers, but inside, I was unraveling. Caleb didn't text, didn't call. His social media went silent. I heard rumors he was at a retreat, but no one said more. I wanted to scream, to tell everyone the truth, but fear kept me quiet. This town didn't forgive people like us. One night, I found a letter slipped under my door. No name, no address, just Caleb's handwriting. "Ethan, I'm sorry. They're watching me, but I'm okay. I'll come back for you. Wait for me." My hand shook as I read it, hope and pain twisting together. He was alive, fighting, but so far away. I hid the letter in my sketchbook, next to the drawing of the beach, and promised myself I'd wait, no matter how long. School became unbearable. The rumors didn't stop. They grew, fueled by kids who didn't even know us. I heard fag whispered behind my back, saw eyes narrow when I walked by. My parents started asking questions, their voices tight with worry. What's going on with you and Caleb? My mom asked one night, her eyes searching mine. I wanted to tell her to let it all spill out, but I couldn't. Not yet. Instead, I said, he's my best friend. That's all. The lie tasted bitter. I started going to the lighthouse every night, hoping for another letter, another sign. One evening, I saw Ms. Harper there, sketching the cliffs. She looked at me, her eyes kind but knowing. You're carrying something heavy, Ethan, she said softly. Art can help. Let out. I nodded, throat tight, and went home to my sketchbook. I drew Caleb, his smile, his eyes, the way he'd looked that night on the beach. Each stroke was a promise, a way to keep him close. But the waiting was killing me. I needed to do something, anything, to fight for him. For us. I couldn't wait anymore. Caleb's letter burned in my mind, a fragile thread holding me together. I had to find him, to know he was okay, to tell him I'd fight for us no matter what. But finding him meant facing the truth about him, about me, about this town that wanted to crush us. I started digging, asking careful questions, searching online for camps upstate. The internet was a maze of horror stories. Kids sent to places like this, broken down, made to feel like monsters. My stomach churned, but I kept going. I had to. One night, I found a name, Hope's Haven, a Christian retreat in upstate New York. The website was all smiles and Bible quotes, but the forums told a different story, strict rules, counseling sessions, kids who came back hollow. I knew that's where Caleb was. I didn't have a plan, just a burning need to get to him. I had some savings from summer jobs, enough for a bus ticket. I told my parents I was visiting a college campus, a lie that felt like betrayal, but was necessary. They didn't question it, too caught up in their own worries about my mood. The bus ride was 8 hours, each mile stretching my nerves thinner. I clutched Caleb's letter, rereading it until the words blurred. When I reached the town nearest Hope's Haven, it was dusk, the air cold and sharp. The camp was a cluster of cabins surrounded by a chain-link fence, like a prison disguised as a summer camp. I hid in the woods nearby, watching, waiting for a glimpse of him. My heart pounded, half expecting to get caught, but I didn't care. I'd come this far. Late that night, I saw him, Caleb, walking between cabins with a group, his head down, his shoulders slumped. He looked thinner, his light dimmed, but it was him. I wanted to shout his name, to run to him, but I stayed hidden, my breath catching. A man in a polo shirt, some kind of counselor, watched the group like a hawk. I waited until they were inside, then crept closer, my sneakers silent on the grass. I found a window, peering into a dimly lit room where Caleb sat, staring at the floor. My heart broke. He looked so alone. I tapped the window, soft but desperate. Caleb's head snapped up, his eyes wide. For a moment, he didn't move, like he thought he was dreaming. Then he rushed to the window, pushing it open just enough to whisper, "Ethan, what the hell are you doing here?" His voice was a mix of fear and relief, and I wanted to climb through and hold him. Instead, I pressed my hand against the glass. "I'm getting you out," I said, my voice fierce. "I'm not leaving without you." He shook his head, eyes glistening. "You can't. They'll catch you. They'll make it worse." But I saw the flicker of hope in his face, the part of him that wanted to believe we could escape. "Meet me tomorrow night," I whispered, "behind a main cabin. Midnight." He nodded, barely, before closing the window. I slipped back into the woods, my heart racing with purpose. I had a plan, reckless and half-formed, but it was something. The next day, I hid in a diner in town, sketching out ideas on napkins, ways to get Caleb out, places we could go. I had no car, no money beyond what I'd brought, but I'd figure it out. I had to. That night, I was back at the camp, crouched in the shadows. Midnight came, and Caleb appeared, moving silently. He saw me and froze, his eyes searching mine. "You're crazy," he whispered, but he was smiling, that old Caleb spark flickering back. We didn't have time to talk. I grabbed his hand, and we ran, the fence looming ahead. I found a gap earlier, just big enough to slip through. We made it, hearts pounding, and kept running until the camp was a speck behind us. In the woods, we stopped, gasping, and I pulled him into my arms. "I love you," I said, the words finally free. He kissed me, hard and desperate, and for a moment, it was just us against the world. But the world wasn't done with us. Headlights cut through the dark, and a voice shouted, "Caleb!" We froze, the counselor from the camp closing in. Our freedom, so brief, was slipping away. The counselor's flashlight beams sliced through the darkness, pinning us like prey. Caleb's hand tightened in mine, his breath ragged. "Run," I whispered, but he shook his head, eyes wide with fear and something else, resolve. "No more running," he said, voice steady despite the chaos. He stepped in front of me, facing the counselor, a man whose face was all hard lines and judgment. "I'm not going back," Caleb said, loud enough for the night to hear. The counselor, Mr. Daniels, sneered, his voice dripping with disdain. "You think you can just walk away? Your father trusted us to fix you." The word fix hit like a slap, but Caleb didn't flinch. "There's nothing to fix," he said, his voice rising. "I love him, and I'm done pretending." My heart swelled, pride and fear warring inside me. I stepped beside him, our shoulders touching, a united front. Daniels lunged, grabbing for Caleb, but I shoved him back, my hands shaking with adrenaline. "Leave him alone," I shouted. For a moment, Daniels looked stunned, then angry, but we didn't wait. We bolted, hand in hand, through the woods, branches snapping underfoot. The flashlight beam chased us, but we knew the terrain better than he did. We reached the road, lungs burning, and flagged down a passing truck. The driver, an older woman with kind eyes, didn't ask questions. "Get in," she said, and we did, collapsing the back seat as she sped away. We didn't speak until we were miles from the camp, the night swallowing the danger behind us. Caleb leaned against me, his head on my shoulder, and I felt his tears soak through my shirt. "I'm sorry," he whispered, "for everything." I kissed his forehead, my own eyes stinging. "You're here now. That's what matters." The driver dropped us at a bus station, slipping us a crumpled 20. "Stay safe, boys," she said, and I'd never been more grateful for a stranger. We bought tickets to Portland, the farthest we could afford. On the bus, Caleb told me everything. The camp's lectures, the shame they tried to drill into him, the letters he'd snuck out to me. "I kept thinking about you," he said, his voice soft. "That night on the beach. It kept me going." I squeezed his hand, the memory of that kiss a lifeline. We didn't know what came next. No money, no plan, but we had each other. For now, that was enough. In Portland, we found a shelter that didn't ask too many questions. The city was loud, alive, nothing like our suffocating town. We got jobs, me at a coffee shop, Caleb washing dishes at a diner. It wasn't glamorous, but it was ours. We rented a tiny room, one bed we shared without fear, and for the first time, we could breathe. We walked the streets hand in hand, kissed under streetlights, lived without looking over our shoulders. But the past wasn't done with us. A month later, Caleb's dad showed up. He tracked us down, his face a mask of rage and disappointment. "You're coming home," he said, grabbing Caleb's arm in the diner. I stepped between them, heart pounding. "He's not going anywhere," I said, my voice steady. The other workers watched, tense, but didn't interfere. Caleb pulled free, standing tall. "I'm not your son anymore," he said, the words cutting through the air. "Not if you can't accept me." His dad left, defeated, and I knew it broke Caleb, but it also set him free. We built a life, slowly. I went to community college, sketching in my spare time, turning our story into art. Caleb found a passion for cooking, his smile returning with every dish he made. We weren't rich, but we were happy, our love a quiet rebellion against the world that tried to break us. The beach, that night, it haunted me, not with pain, but with power. It was the moment we chose each other against all odds. Years later, we returned to that beach, older now, stronger. The driftwood was still there, weathered but standing. We carved our initials into it, a quiet claim on the place where it all began. The ocean roared, just as it had that night, but now it felt like it was cheering us on. We'd won, not just against the town, the camp, the hate, but for ourselves, for love. And that memory, once a ghost, now shines like the moon over the waves.